wild when you think about it, right? Microelectronics, they're like everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously our computers and phones, that's a given.
Sure.
But like even my toaster
Oh, yeah.
probably has a tiny computer chip running the show in there.
Pretty much anything these days.
But here's the thing.
What's that?
All that computing power, especially with, AI getting more and more
Sophisticated.
sophisticated.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like it comes with a pretty big energy bill.
Oh, absolutely. And it's only going to get more demanding as AI gets even more complex and all the data just skyrocket. Like, think about data centers.
Right.
They eat up a huge chunk of global energy already. And honestly, we're just getting started with what AI can do.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
How so?
We're building these super smart machines, but we might be hitting an energy wall.
Yeah, it's a real concern.
So how do we keep innovating without, like, causing blackouts everywhere?
Well, that's where this Department of Energy initiative comes in.
Oh, yeah, I read about that.
They're putting like $179 million into these 3 new research centers dedicated to totally reinventing microelectronics.
Wow.
The goal is pretty ambitious. It's to develop chips that aren't just more powerful, but also way more energy efficient.
Okay.
And they got to be able to handle these massive, huge data sets of the future. Yeah.
So it's like solving 2 problems at once.
Exactly. Tackling the energy issue and the data deluge head on.
That's pretty awesome. Tell me more about these centers. What makes them so special?
The cool thing is they're all about co-design.
Co-design? What's that?
So basically, they're bringing together scientists from like all these different fields: materials, science, computing, AI.
Oh, so they're not just working separately.
Nope, working together from the very beginning. It's really collaborative, which is pretty unusual, and it breaks down those traditional walls between, the different departments.
So more...
Cross-pollination of ideas.
Right, exactly. And I've been hearing a lot about SLAC National Accelerator Laboratory.
Oh, SLACs, yeah.
They're leading a bunch of these projects, right?
2 of them for sure, plus collaborating on others. They're kind of the MVPs of microelectronics right now.
It makes sense. They have all that expertise in like X-ray science and high-energy physics.
Right. It's crucial for this stuff. They have tools and techniques that can like analyze materials down to the atomic level, which, is super important for building these next-gen microchips.
Definitely. Okay, so let's talk about one of the projects SLAC is leading, MeerKAT's, Microelectronics Energy Efficiency Research Center for Advanced Technologies. That's a mouthful.
Catchy, right.
Super catchy. But from what I understand, MeerKAT's whole thing is going beyond Moore's Law.
Exactly.
Which, for anyone who doesn't know, is this idea that computing power doubles roughly every 2 years because transistors keep getting smaller.
Right. It's been the driving force of the industry for decades.
But I'm hearing Moore's Law might be hitting a wall.
Yeah, that's the problem. We're kind of reaching the physical limits of silicon. As those transistors shrink and shrink, we get down to the atomic level, and quantum effects start messing things up.
Oh, wow.
It's like trying to cram an infinite number of books onto one shelf. Eventually, you just run out of space.
So how's MeerKAT dealing with this? How do they boost performance without just, like, using more energy?
They've got a few really cool strategies. One project under MeerKAT, it's called ISTEAM.
ISTEAM, okay.
They're looking into 3D chips.
3D chips, like three-dimensional.
Yeah, think of it like building a skyscraper instead of just a flat city, Stacking layers of transistors vertically, you get way more space to work with.
Oh, I get it. More space, more transistors, more computing power.
Exactly. But it's not just about stacking. ISTEAM's also exploring totally new materials.
Like what?
Well, this might sound strange, but their inspiration is the human brain.
The brain. Wait, are they trying to build computer chips that work like brains?
In a way, yeah. The brain is insanely efficient with energy, way more than any computer we've built. And it does this because of its structure. It's all complex and interconnected.
Huh.
So the ISTEAM team, they're trying to mimic that structure in microelectronics, make chips that process info more like a brain, less like a traditional computer.
That's so cool. But how do they even, like, mimic the brain structure? It's so complex.
It's definitely a huge challenge, but they're being really clever about it. One key thing is they're moving away from that classic computer design where memory and processing are separate.
Okay.
Instead, they're trying to integrate those functions, like put memory and processing in the same device, just like the brain does, processing info locally.
So instead of data zipping all over the dip, it's all happening right there, where it's stored.
Exactly. Way more efficient. And that's just one way they're taking cues from the brain. They're also working on chips that can do massive parallel processing.
Parallel processing.
Yeah, like tons of calculations happening at the same time, like the brain's network of neurons, all firing and connecting.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. So with all this brain mimicking, are we talking about, like, phones that last for weeks on one charge? or data centers that don't need their own power plants.
Those are the dreams, right? I mean, we're still early in the research, but the potential is huge.
It really sounds like Meerkat's pulling the limits, and this is just one of their projects.
One of many. They're also working on something called ORICE.
ORICE?
Yeah, and it tackles another big problem, data overload.
Oh, data overload. I feel that every day. My inbox.
Right, but think about scientific instruments. They generate data faster than we can even process it. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose.
I can only imagine. So how's ORICE dealing with that?
They're focused on processing data right at the sensor itself.
What does that mean?
So instead of sending all the data to a central computer, they want to process it right there. It's like having a tiny brain built into your thermometer or whatever the sensor is.
A tiny brain and a thermometer.
It makes decisions about the data before it even gets transmitted, like, is this important? Is this interesting?
So it's filtering things out, only sending the most important stuff.
Exactly. Way more efficient, cuts down on all those bottlenecks.
Makes sense. Any examples of how that would actually work? Like in real life?
Sure. Imagine a self-driving car, right?
Okay.
It's got all these sensors, cameras, and whatnot. Instead of sending all that visual data to the car's main computer to process, the sensors themselves analyze it right there.
Wow.
So they can make split-second decisions about steering, braking, all that.
So it's faster and more efficient.
Exactly. Less data flying around, less energy wasted. And this isn't just for self-driving cars, obviously.
Yeah, I was going to say this could be used for like everything.
Right. Medical devices that can analyze your vitals in real time, or weather forecasting models that are constantly updating with info from thousands of smart sensors.
More data, less lag, and a smaller energy footprint. That's incredible.
It's pretty revolutionary. So we've got Meerkat pushing the limits of energy efficiency and performance, and ORICE tackling data overload.
Right. But you said there were 3 research centers, right? What's the third one all about?
The third one's a little different. They're focused on extreme environments.
Extreme environments. Like what?
Think inside a particle accelerator or outer space, places where regular electronics just wouldn't survive.
Oh, wow, yeah. Too hot, too cold, radiation.
Exactly. It's a whole other set of challenges.
So how are they even approaching that? Like, what can you do to make electronics survive in those conditions?
Well, for starters, they're looking at completely different materials. Stuff that can handle the extreme temperatures and radiation.
Like what?
Things like silicon carbide and gallium nitride. Much tougher than regular silicon.
So instead of trying to protect the chip, they're just making it out of super tough stuff.
Pretty much. But design matters too. They're using techniques like radiation hardening, which basically modifies the chip's layout to make it less vulnerable to, well, radiation.
It sounds incredibly complex.
It is. They're also coming up with new ways to package the chips to shield them from physical damage and keep them running in these crazy environments.
It's amazing. They're like tiny, super tough marvels of engineering. And I bet the applications go way beyond just extreme environments.
Oh, absolutely. This research could lead to electronics that are way more durable and reliable for everyone.
Yeah, I was thinking, imagine a phone that doesn't break when you drop it.
Exactly. Or medical devices that work perfectly even in like really demanding situations. And don't forget about the energy efficiency gains.
Oh, right.
Chips that can run at super high temperatures could lead to much more efficient power electronics, less waste heat, less energy used overall.
It's incredible how all this stuff is connected. We've talked about brain-inspired computing, extreme environments, new materials. What else is coming down the pipeline in the world of microelectronics? What other breakthroughs are on the horizon?
Well, there's one area that's getting a lot of attention, and it's pretty mind-blowing.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
Quantum computing.
Quantum computing. I've heard that term, but...
It's basically harnessing the power of quantum mechanics to do calculations that are impossible for regular computers.
Quantum mechanics. That sounds like seriously advanced stuff.
It is. It's all about qubits instead of bits.
Qubits.
Right. Regular computers use bits, which are either 0 or 1, but qubits can be in a superposition of states, meaning they can be 0 and 1 at the same time.
Whoa. How is that even possible?
Quantum mechanics. It's weird, but it works, and it allows quantum computers to do many calculations at once, like exponentially increasing their power.
So we're talking about solving problems that would take regular computers years, maybe even centuries, in like minutes.
Potentially, yeah. It's still early days for quantum computing, but it has huge potential for fields like medicine, materials science, even cryptography.
Wow, I'm starting to feel like we're living in the future. But with all this talk about quantum mechanics and super advanced materials, is there a risk that microelectronics will become so complex that only a handful of people even understand it anymore?
That's a valid point. It's definitely getting more complex. But I think the core idea is still about problem solving,
Right.
using what we know about physics to build devices that solve real problems.
So even if the science is super complicated, the applications and the benefits can be understood by everyone.
Absolutely. And that's what's so exciting about it. It's this amazing mix of cutting-edge science and real-world usefulness.
This has been an incredible deep dive so far. We've learned about brain-inspired chips, extreme environments, memristors, even quantum computing. My head is spinning.
It's a lot to take in, for sure, but it's all incredibly fascinating.
It really is. Where do we go from here? What other fascinating insights await us in the world of microelectronics?
Well, in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to get even more into the nitty-gritty.
Oh.
We'll look at the specific materials they're using, the manufacturing techniques. Get ready for a trip into the nanoscale world, where atoms and molecules are the building blocks of innovation.
I can't wait. It's clear that the future of microelectronics is incredibly bright, full of possibilities that could change our lives in ways we can't even imagine yet.
It's an exciting time to be following this field, that's for sure.
Absolutely. We'll be back soon to continue exploring this amazing world.
Looking forward to it.
So before we move on, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, those brain-inspired chips.
Oh, yeah.
That whole idea of mimicking the human brain to make, more efficient electronics. It's kind of mind-blowing.
I know, right?
But it also sounds insanely complex.
Oh, it definitely is. Super complex. But that's what makes it so exciting to work on. Yeah.
I guess so.
The human brain, it's like the ultimate in efficiency. Processes tons of info, but uses hardly any energy.
Right, way more efficient than our computers.
Oh, for sure. Like traditional computers, they rely on this constant back and forth
Between.
memory and processing units, which just eats up energy.
So you're saying one of the key differences is that the brain processes info locally?
Exactly.
It doesn't have that, separation between memory and processing?
Nope, it's all integrated. Think about it, like if every time you wanted to access a memory,
Yeah.
you had to send a request to a different part of your brain and wait for it to come back.
Oh,
It
man.
could be so slow, right? And totally inefficient.
Makes sense.
But the brain, it evolved to process info right where it's stored, in those synapses containing neurons.
So how are researchers actually trying to, copy that localized processing in a microchip?
That's a good question. So silicon's still the main material, but researchers are looking at a ton of new materials and architectures.
Yeah, to, make it more brain-like.
Yep. One area that's really hot right now is neuromorphic computing. It uses these things called memristors.
Memristors. Okay, now you're just making up words.
I know, it sounds kind of sci-fi, but they're basically resistors with memory.
Resistors with memory.
Yeah, so their resistance changes depending on the electrical signals that have passed through them.
Okay.
Kind of like how the connections between neurons in your brain, they change based on your experiences.
So it's not just an on-off switch like a transistor.
Right, it's more nuanced, more like analog.
So they can store info in a more, complex way.
Exactly, like having tiny little analog memories built right into the chip.
Huh.
And that analog thing, it's really important for mimicking how the brain learns and adapts.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So by using memristors, they're basically trying to make chips that can learn.
In a way, yeah. The goal is to make systems that can learn from data, recognize patterns, make decisions, all in a way that's more efficient, more like how the brain does it.
So are we talking like chips that can actually think? Artificial intelligence that can, solve problems on its own?
Well, think might be pushing it a bit, at least for now, but the idea is to get closer to that, yeah. To create systems that can process info in a more sophisticated way.
Okay, this is seriously blowing my mind, but maybe we should shift gears a bit.
Sure.
What about those extreme environments we talked about before? Like, how are they designing chips that can function in places that would, fry a normal computer?
Yeah, that's a whole other challenge, but super interesting too. For those extreme cases, they're using different materials, stuff that can take the heat, literally.
Okay, like what?
Things like silicon carbide, gallium nitride.
Never heard of them.
They're known for being able to handle super high temperatures and radiation, much better than regular silicon.
So they're not even trying to shield the chip, just build it out of tougher stuff.
It's kind of like that, yeah. But the design's important too. They use techniques like radiation hardening. It basically changes the chip's layout so it's less affected by radiation.
Wow.
And they're working on new packaging methods too to protect the chip from damage and make sure it lasts a long time even in those crazy environments.
It's amazing how they come up with this stuff. It's not just building a chip. It's like creating these tiny little survivors.
Right? It's a testament to how creative and ingenious people can be. And the cool thing is, what they learned from this research, it can benefit everyone, not just those extreme environments.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, imagine if our phones were that tough.
Exactly. or medical devices that could operate perfectly no matter what. And let's not forget about the energy efficiency, too.
Right, right.
Developing chips that can run at those high temperatures, it could revolutionize power electronics, make them way more efficient, less wasteful.
This is also fascinating. We've covered brain-inspired computing, extreme environments, memristors. It's a lot.
It is.
So what other breakthroughs are like on the horizon? What else is coming up in microelectronics?
There's one thing in particular that's getting a ton of attention lately, and it's pretty mind-blowing, even compared to everything else we've talked about.
Okay, lay it on me.
Quantum computing.
Quantum computing. I feel like I've heard that term, but I honestly have no idea what it is.
It's basically using the principles of quantum mechanics to do calculations that are just impossible for normal computers to do.
Quantum mechanics. That sounds like next level stuff.
It is. It's all about qubits, not bits.
Qubits, like instead of bits.
Exactly. See, normal computers, they use bits, which are either a 0 or a 1.
Right, makes sense.
But qubits, they can be in what's called a superposition of states.
A super what?
Superposition. It basically means they could be both 0 and 1 at the same time.
Wait, hold on. How is that even possible?
It's quantum mechanics. It's super weird, but it works. And it lets these quantum computers do tons of calculations simultaneously. Increases their processing power exponentially.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. So we're talking about, like, solving problems that would take normal computers, I don't know, years to figure out.
Years, decades, even centuries, maybe. Quantum computers could potentially solve them in, like, minutes.
Whoa.
Still early days, of course, but it has huge implications. Think drug discovery, materials science, cryptography, all that.
Wow, this is seriously like something out of sci-fi.
It kind of is.
But with all this talk about quantum mechanics and super advanced materials, I gotta ask.
What's that?
Is there a risk that all this becomes so complex that, only a handful of geniuses can even understand it anymore?
I see your point. It's definitely getting more and more complex. But I think at its core, it's still about problem solving, right?
Yeah.
Using what we know about the physical world to build stuff that solves real-world problems.
So even if the science is crazy complicated, the applications, the benefits, that stuff can still be grasped by, normal people.
For sure. And I think that's what makes it so exciting. It's this blend of, like, cutting-edge science and practical stuff that actually helps people.
Totally. This deep dive has been intense, to say the least, but super interesting.
Glad you're enjoying it.
We've gone from brain-inspired chips to extreme environments, memristors. We even touched on quantum computing. What's next? What other insights are waiting for us in the world of microelectronics?
Well, in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to zoom in even further.
Oh.
We'll look at the specific materials they're using, how they manufacture these chips. It's pretty wild.
Sounds good.
Get ready for a trip into the nanoscale world,
Already.
where atoms and molecules are the building blocks of innovation.
It's amazing to think that we're manipulating stuff at that level.
I know, right? It's pretty incredible what we can do these days.
Well, I'm definitely eager to hear more. This has been an incredible journey so far.
Me too.
And it's clear that the future of microelectronics is incredibly bright, to say the least. Full of possibilities that could change our lives in ways we can't even imagine.
Absolutely. It's an exciting time to be paying attention to this field.
It really is. We'll be back soon to continue exploring this amazing world.
Looking forward to it.
It's wild, right? We've gone from like brain-inspired chips to ones that can survive in a volcano or space. And then quantum computing. It feels like we're living in the future already.
I know. It's moving so fast, and the possibilities are, well, kind of endless. It's not just about making things smaller anymore. It's like we're totally rethinking how we design and build electronics.
You mentioned co-design before, how it's changing the whole innovation game. Can you talk more about that? What makes it so powerful?
Sure. So, in the past, everyone kind of worked in their own little bubbles.
Departments.
Exactly. Material scientists, they'd make cool new materials. Then they'd toss it over to the electrical engineers to figure out the circuits. And then the computer scientists would come in and do the software. Everyone was separate.
So no one was really talking to each other.
Pretty much. But with co-design, all these experts, they work together from the very beginning, sharing their knowledge, their ideas. It's way more collaborative.
So instead of just saying, hey, here's a new material, good luck with that, it's more like a conversation.
Exactly. It's back and forth, a lot of brainstorming, and that's how you get these really innovative solutions, like the neuromorphic computing we talked about, or those extreme environment chips.
It's not just about building a better microchip, it's about a whole new way of working together, right? More teamwork.
Totally. And that kind of mindset, it's super important for tackling the big challenges we face, like figuring out sustainable energy or making healthcare better or exploring space, all that needs microelectronics.
It's like this technology touches every part of our lives, but with all this amazing progress, I gotta ask, are there any risks? Things we should be worried about as microelectronics become even more a part of our world?
Yeah, that's a really important point. Like with any powerful tool, there's always potential for misuse, right? Or unintended consequences. We need to be talking about these ethical issues, making sure this tech is used responsibly.
So it's not just can we do it, but also should we do it, and how do we do it right?
Exactly. Like with AI, for example, these super smart systems, they're powered by these advanced chips. We got to be careful about bias, about transparency, make sure these AI systems are actually benefiting everyone, not just a few people.
It sounds like we need everyone at the table, not just the scientists and engineers.
For sure. Policymakers, ethicists, the public. We all need to be part of shaping the future of this tech. Because it is the future.
This deep dive has been, I don't know, eye-opening, inspiring, a little scary, honestly, but definitely fascinating.
It is a lot to take in, for sure, but it's important to understand what's happening.
We've learned about brain-inspired chips, extreme environment chips, memristors, quantum computing. It's amazing how fast this field is moving.
It's incredible, and it's only going to get more exciting from here. To all our listeners out there, stay curious. Keep learning about this stuff. Get involved in the conversation, because this technology, it's shaping the future, and we can all be part of that.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the microelectronics revolution. Until next time, keep those minds curious, folks. SEEEO.